heard the crunch of the bone when she broke my arm and she ripped these tendons, like took a chunk of meat out. And that initial pain. And I just went, and I made this noise and kind of flinched and pulled my arm away. And that, making that movement just triggered this like frenzy. And then she would just, and then she just picked me up and she would shake me like a rag doll and toss me. And I'd fly over 20 feet and hit the ground. I would just roll face down, curled up again. And immediately she was back on top of me again. Just boom, like that. And she'd bit this arm probably 25 times, my shoulder. At one point, she kind of half turned me, bit me in the side. I had canine marks in my side, but luckily they didn't puncture through, just, surface bite.
That is so lucky.
And and just crazy how strong they were. I was just, I was a rag doll.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mountain Tough podcast. We are stoked that you are here diving into these episodes week after week. It is our goal to continue to bring you inspiring, inspirational, motivational guests that allow you to dive into your mental toughness and your mindset and help you live that abundant life. Thanks for making this show one of the top mental toughness shows in the country. And if this is your first time here, or if you haven't done so already, if you could leave us a ranking or a review in the app store, the podcast store of your choice, that would mean a ton to us. Those reviews really help. The rankings really help get these episodes out to more people to help and inspire more folks as well. And they mean a ton to us here at Mountain Tough. The Mountain Tough team loves seeing those come through. So if you haven't left a review already, please do so. Now I'm going to shift gears into what's going on at the lab. Around the Mountain Tough lab, there is a big buzz right now. January, a lot of people are kicking off, diving into their 2024 goals, and they're tackling these goals with some intention. So we love this time of year. We love seeing people start those steps to change their life and improve their life and focusing on themselves. The Mountain Tough community globally is doing that a lot of different ways, especially through some of our new programs we released to start off 2024. So we have Mountain Strength with Donnie, the 6-week strength program to get your strength up to baseline. We have Kettlebell Diesel. That one is super popular. Kettlebell Diesel is a kettlebell program that focuses on strength and speed, and it's going to take you up to that next level. And then the Mountain is a 4-week mental toughness minimal gear block. That one is phenomenal. In addition, so many people have dove into Kyle Camp's nutrition program, getting their nutrition cleaned up and dialed for 2024. We love seeing that. Now, I wanted to let you guys know to come see us at Western Hunt Expo. We will be there in the booth. We'll be back with the Mountain Ops crew this year. That big setup in the back, the Mountain Tough team will be hooked on back there, and we want to see you guys come say hi. Come find us at the Mountain Tough booth, hooked to the Mountain Ops booth at Western Hunt, Salt Lake City. Also, we'll have a Mountain Tough on the road, Salt Lake City, Western Hunt. So we're going to be gathering together February 16th at 6 a.m. for a Mountain Tough on the road workout. So if you're going to Western Hunt, if you plan on being at Western Hunt Expo, come see us at the booth and don't miss that workout. Mountain Tough on the road, February 16th, 6 a.m. Transitioning now to today's guest. Today's guest is a one-of-a-kind local legend, Todd Orr. Todd Orr is not only a Grizzly attack survivor, but Todd Orr is a true mountain legend. I wouldn't be surprised if he's hiked more miles in the Montana backcountry than any other human who has existed. He spent his whole entire career building trails, setting up trails, documenting trails in Southwest Montana. And he's also a knife builder, builds amazing knives called Skyblade knives. But he went through a crazy experience a couple years ago where he was actually charged and attacked by a grizzly bear not only once, but twice. the most impressive part about Todd is not the Grizzly attack. It's Todd himself and his mindset. He has the nickname Uncomfortable Todd because he's pushing himself in these uncomfortable situations year after year after year. Stand by as I dive into my conversation with Todd Orr. I still have in my truck in my center console, I always have my Skyblade knife, and you engraved my last name in it, Defenderfer. Mm-hmm. And then my dad still has his that he always has in his truck. But I think we bought those, it had to be in like 2004 or something.
It's been a long time for sure. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Almost 20 years I know.
Ago. Time flies. Huh?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, they still look brand new. Those things are awesome.
Good. Glad you're getting lots of use out of them.
Yeah. So Sig Sauer is doing an awesome thing on the Mountain Tough podcast now. So they're presenting each guest with a custom pistol. And so I wanted you to see this one.
Fantastic.
So because of the bear story, Sig has given you this new gun. So this is a Sig Endure. This is their 10 millimeter.
Okay.
And so it's a great Grizzly defense gun.
Absolutely.
Being the 10 millimeter. And so it's got the stipling, the custom stipling in the grip. And then there's the Picatinny rail for light. Mm-hmm. And then they've customized the slide with the topographic lines, which is amazing. And then these have the sight plate so people can put a sight right on there like a red dot.
Sure.
And then they have the night sights as well. But
that looks fantastic.
But yeah, this is our gift to you. You can check it out if you want. Yeah. Yeah, the 10mm, wow. The 10mm is really growing in popularity for Grizzly defense.
Absolutely. Yeah, 10mm or anything, larger. 44 is what I've used a lot of, and then a 10mm as well.
Yep.
So, wow, that's very nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks to Sig. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
I shot a bull elk with a 10mm years ago.
You did?
I did, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep, made a custom scope for it, a scope mount that I designed and put on there, and shot a nice 6-point bull with it. Then I went back to the 44 after that, but I just had to try it once.
I know that's part of your legendary story is you've killed quite a few bulls with a pistol, right?
31 bulls with a pistol now, the handgun. Yep.
Holy smokes. That is nuts. So you started doing that when you were pretty young.
I did, yeah. Back in like 87 or 88, somewhere in there is when I first got my Ruger revolver, 44 mag. I got a scope on it, and I'd been rifle hunting since I was a kid, and I got into bow hunting when I was like 14. And I just kind of wanted more of a challenge than rifle hunting. If I didn't get something with a bow, I wanted to get out there and be like, okay, let's make this more of a challenge. And so a guy I was working for, he told me, he's like, well, why don't you try pistol hunting? And I'm like, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah. So he's like, here, I can help you figure out what you need. And so I got a 44 mag and got a scope on it and started chasing elk with a pistol. And after I shot the first couple of years, I carried a rifle and a pistol. And just in case, because I'm like, if there's a bull out there at 300 yards and I can't shoot it with a pistol, I'm not going to let it go, a big bull. But after I got a couple with the pistol, then I gave up the rifle hunting completely. And I've been packing a pistol ever since. And
that is wild.
So it's so much fun. I wait till like the last couple weeks of the season, and usually there's like a foot or two of tracking snow. Yeah. The bulls have all pulled away from the cows, and they're kind of in their little bachelor herd up on the side of a mountain. Yeah. And I'll just get up there at 9,000 feet or somewhere and try to follow these big bulls around, and usually in the heavy timber and trying to sneak in.
And their tracks.
Down on my knees, and you got some tracking snow and looking through the trees and try to get into 100 yards or something like that and get a shot on a nice big bull.
That is crazy.
So a lot of fun. I love it. It's like Dirty Harry in the woods.
Yeah.
Make their day.
And that's mostly with the 44 mag?
44 mag, yep. A Ruger Super Red Hawk is what I've used for years.
Long
except for
barrel.
the one 10mm that I used, but yep.
Man, and with the scope, you're pretty accurate out to 100?
It's accurate a lot farther than that, actually. It's got a 9.5-inch barrel, and then I've got a variable scope on it. Mm-hmm. And I've shot out. I can put a 6-inch group at 200 yards.
That's crazy.
With a rest. So,
yeah.
But, I prefer to be at 100 yards and just to be safe and to make sure you don't have something go wrong, and that's usually I'm usually hunting the timber. So you're in closer, kind of thicker timber, jungle timber, and 100 yards is usually about the max you're going to see something anyway. So,
and what kind of knockdown power does that 44?
I shoot a 240 grain bullet, and I do my own hand loads, and they're pretty hot, and it's got a lot of punch to it. And I don't take any chances on, shooting at one running or at a bad shot. It's got to be perfectly, broadside, a little bit facing away, get a shot right behind the shoulder and punch through the lungs or a heart or something like that. I've had a couple that I shot at up to over 200 yards with it,
wow.
But it's like the perfect rest, the perfect situation. The bull's, not walking or moving or anything, but I try to keep it at 100 yards when possible.
So you can still find a rest on that pistol, so you'll rest like on a tree branch or something?
Yeah, I usually lean against a tree. If I'm in the open and there's no tree, then I'll kind of lean back and put the pistol across my knees and kind of use my knees as a rest. And
dang.
Yeah, I shot, a few offhand at 100 yards.
That's crazy.
At 100 yards, I can hold pretty still offhand, but anything farther than that, you got to have a good rest. And I'll try to get a rest if possible. I've set my pack down before and leaned across my pack. If I've got the time,
You probably haven't met too many other pistol elk hunters, have you?
I haven't. I met one guy. I was at SHOT Show years ago, and there was a guy that does is on TV show doing pistol hunting, and he had shot a cow elk with a pistol and was bragging about that. And I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, I've shot. I think it was like 26 bulls with a pistol back then, and he was looking at me like, yeah, I don't think he believed me. He thought I was lying.
That is wild.
Yeah, and his was like on private land, and it was a cow with a pistol, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah. You're doing all public land.
I'm doing public land.
Forest.
I don't hunt private. I'm all public, and it's just, late season sneaking in on the elk and trying to outsmart them. And, 9 out of 10 times it doesn't work. They see you move or they catch your wind or there's always something, but you just, get back on it again and okay, what's the next plan?
And luck out sometimes.
Yep. And so it's a lot of luck too. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Right place, right time.
Are you doing any archery hunting anymore then?
I am not, because of my arm. After getting my arm tore up, I just can't keep my wrist locked out to pull a bow.
Mm-hmm.
If I get a brace made or something like that, I could start shooting again. But I'm so busy at work in the fall that it's just it just never seems to work out anyway. That's the time of year we're trying to get projects done before the snow comes in. So I've just waited till pistol season, till hunting season.
That is super cool.
Thanks.
And did you grow up in Montana?
I grew up in Ennis. Yeah. Yep. Over in the Madison Valley there, and moved there when I was in second grade, 7 years old. And it was kind of interesting. We came into town, and my dad was a fish hatchery manager. So we came to the fish hatchery, and we were still waiting for the moving van to get there. And it was, 4 hours away or something. So Dad's like, hey, let's jump in the Jeep. And so we had this little Toyota Land Cruiser that we actually bought just an hour from town on our way into town, because Dad's like, we're going to live in Montana. We need a Jeep. So we bought this Toyota Land Cruiser Jeep. And Dad's like, let's go down to the river. So we jumped in the Jeep, and it's just 2 miles from the fish hatchery down to the Madison River. And Dad put a fly rod in my hand and started teaching me how to fly fish. So before I even had moved into my bedroom in Montana, I was fly fishing the Madison River. And
before you even went home.
Yeah, before we even moved into our house. So
that's awesome.
Just addicted to fly fishing then, and grew up doing that for years. And then, obviously following my dad around in the woods during hunting season and helping him try to drag an animal out of the woods. And finally, when I was old enough to hunt, and started doing it on my own. So my whole life has been around the Southwest Montana, hunting,
outdoors.
Fishing, outdoors, camping, hiking. We did a lot of family things like that all summer. Every weekend we're out four-wheeling and camping, and every hunting season, the whole family jumped in the Jeep and headed to the mountains.
What was your dad doing for work?
He was the manager at the Ennis National Fish Hatchery.
Okay.
So he was a fisheries biologist.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you were surrounded by everything outdoors.
Everything outdoors. Yeah. And my parents had met before they got married. They had met on a river when they were both fishing. My dad was with a buddy, and my mom was with a girlfriend of hers, and they were both fishing and kind of ran into each other, and like, oh, this is perfect, big fishing family. So
that's amazing. That is awesome. And then when did you get involved with actually working for the Forest Service?
So in 1990, I started working at the Forest Service, worked in timber sale preparation, and just kind of, I walked into the office and just said, hey, I want an outside job. What do you got? And happened to be a guy there standing there that I was talking to. And he's like, hey, I'm the new forester here, and we're going to be doing some timber sale stuff for part of the big land exchange that was going on in the area here. So that was kind of my seasonal job starting in 1990. And I worked for him for about 6 seasons, I think it was, and just 6 months of the year. And then in the wintertime, I'm building knives and on my knife business. And then finally got in permanent with him in mid 90s, like in 96, and worked in timber. And I have a degree in fish and wildlife management. So I worked a little bit in biology and fisheries and wildlife projects, and then got back into timber full time. And then finally, timber kind of fell apart in this area, and so got into engineering about 17 years ago and been doing trails engineering ever since.
Did you get that degree from Bozeman?
Yes. Yep. Fish and wildlife management from MSU.
And then, so over the years and then now currently, how many days a year are you spending outside, you think?
Well, my job, as soon as you can get to the woods, as soon as the snow melts and we have projects down low in the valley or just up in the foothills, I'll be out there in May usually and start working in the field. And then I go right until the snow's too much to do the work, to do the project or to see the terrain and the ground properly. So into November usually, sometimes a little bit later. And then in the wintertime, I'm working on trails contracts, getting stuff prepped for next season and getting maps made and all the paperwork side of it. So once the snow melts, I can hit the ground. And I'm almost every day, probably 9 out of 10 days, I'm in the woods and usually doing 12 to 16-hour days. I can kind of work my own schedule as long as I'm getting the work done, you know, and it's like I don't like to drive an hour somewhere and then come back after 8 hours and wasting a bunch of time, you know. Yeah. So it's like I'll get up at daylight and hit the woods right away and be at a trailhead at daylight and hike all day until 9 o'clock at night and try to get back to the truck at dark, you know, and get a 16-hour day in and get be most efficient as I can with the projects out there.
So you've hiked almost every trail in Southwest Montana?
Well, probably not all of them, but a lot of them. Yeah. There's a couple I haven't been up, but most of the trails around here I'm pretty familiar with.
And you're not really leaving Southwest Montana. You're staying in this region.
Most of it's in this region. You know, the Custer Forest is now part of the Gallatin. It's the Custer-Gallatin National Forest now. And so our projects do reach all the way over to Red Lodge and clear back, to the eastern Montana.
Even to that Ashland stuff?
Yep. But there's not much for trails over there that need work. And there's a couple people over there that can take on what little maintenance projects there are. We're not really building new stuff over there or doing major reroutes or anything. So most of my work is, Cook City, Gardner, West Yellowstone, Big Timber, Bridgers, Crazies, Gallatin area. So
that's some amazing country.
Oh, it is. There's so much out there, and it's just so fun to explore and just seeing some new terrain. And most of it's cross country. When I'm working on a new trail system, I've have to get out there and it's cross country. You don't have any trail. There's no trail there to start with, so I'm just hanging flags through the woods and it's down into the canyons and up the other side. And all of a sudden you run into an elk, a bunch of elk bedded or something. Jeez. Or a bear or whatever. And you never see any people. I spend the whole day out there by myself and it's, crawling over the deadfall and through the jungle, and it's a workout for sure. But I love it. Just exploring off trail, basically.
You're getting so many miles in every year then?
Oh yeah. Anywhere from, 10 to 20 miles a day, just depending on the projects. I've had a couple days I was 30 miles, I think, working up in the Madison Range over here up Buck Creek, and I was doing 30 miles a day, and it was just driving a dirt bike in, parking, and then hiking down all day for 15 hours and coming out in the dark, and just nonstop hiking. No, don't take any breaks or stop and just following terrain.
It's pretty much a dream job for you then. Huh?
It really is for my lifestyle and what I've grown up. And, I just love exercise and being outside, and put those two together. It's perfect and get paid for it. And
wild.
Yeah, it's difficult working for the federal government, all the BS that goes on there. But, I just try to stay out of the office, stay away from the politics, and just get my work done, get my job done, have something to show for it in the end.
Stay outside.
Absolutely. Yep.
Man, what are you carrying for a day pack? Are you just bringing a few things and some lunch?
I just have a small Mystery Ranch day pack that I carry, and I just I don't ever eat anything during the day. I'm one of those people that I don't need the energy. I have this built-in energy or something. So I don't take any food. I just carry some water with me, and then just some survival things, that you might need out there just in case. And I always carry a PLB, personal locating beacon, just in case, because you don't have cell service in a lot of those canyons. And in case something does go wrong, I can pull that as the last resort. If I can't crawl my way back to the truck in like 24 hours, then I guess I got to pull the plug and get some help. But that's a last resort for sure. But yeah, just some basic survival stuff and bear spray and handgun, and just in case I run into a bear kind of situation,
and just a bottle of water.
And a bottle of water.
That's wild.
I don't eat during the day at all. I just eat like a pound of meat at night and I'm good to go.
That's crazy.
Sleep 5 hours, get up, do it again.
Yeah, you're breaking all human science philosophy.
A lot of people say that. It's like, God, you have like some kind of alien genes or something going on here? What's going on?
Yeah, most people need carbohydrates for energy.
Yeah, no,
That's awesome.
I eat a lot of protein, and I get average probably 5 hours of sleep a night. So is what my average is. I can get by on less, no problem. I don't get tired or anything. Just once I'm moving and doing something, I'm good all day.
You might be an alien, actually.
Or maybe, yeah.
So how did you get into making knives?
Well, back in 87, there was a friend of my parents over in Ennis, where I grew up, that was a knife maker, and he was in his 80s. And I was over there for dinner one night, and my parents had invited him to dinner. And so we're sitting there chatting, and he's like, "Oh, you should come out to my shop, and I'll show you how to make a knife." And I'm like, "All right." So I went out to his shop on a couple different weekends, and he was kind of showing me what to do to build a custom knife. And so I was like, "Oh, this is really fun. I like doing this." And he's like, "Would you like to work for me?" And I was like, "Well, I could use some extra money right now." And I was in college. And so I took that quarter off of college in the fall to just work for him and try to make some extra money to pay for school again.
Yeah.
And he was selling his knives at the Hole in the Wall Art Gallery there in Ennis. And so as soon as I started making these knives for him, then he quit doing it. And so I'm making all these knives. He's paying me like $6 an hour, and all the knives are going to the Hole in the Wall Art Gallery. And he would just sit over there every day by his wood stove and read a magazine while I'm working away for him,
No
and
way.
So, yeah. And then when I came back to college after Christmas, and I wanted to keep doing it, so I didn't even have a garage. I was in an apartment without a garage. So I had a buddy that had a garage, and I went in, kind of made a homemade grinder and got a bandsaw and started making knives on my own in this buddy's garage. And it was just like to sell one to a friend at school, some kid I'd meet in biology lab, and he'd want one for Father's Day for his dad or something, And so I'd make a knife for him. And so it was just a couple here and there. And then Bob, the guy that Bob Shoup was his name, that had taught me how to make knives, he just was too old, couldn't get his hands to work anymore. Okay. So he kind of just quit doing it. He couldn't do it. So the Hole in the Wall Gallery called me, and they're like, "Hey, we know you were helping Bob, last year. Would you like to, put your knives in our gallery?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I kind of had to upgrade some equipment, pick up my speed a little bit, and started making knives for the Hole in the Wall Gallery. And then the accountant for the Hole in the Wall Gallery was also the accountant for Montana Trails Gallery here in Bozeman. So then They called me and said, "Hey, we hear you're selling knives over there. We want some." And so then it kind of expanded to, I probably had a dozen outlets around the country that were selling my knives.
And that was about the time you came up with your name.
And then I came up with, I was trying Big Sky Country, and I'm like Skyblade knives, So I kind of came up with that and started marketing it a little bit more. And I had, like I said, I had like a dozen outlets selling them, but they're taking 40-50% off the top. And I'm just like, geez, I'm not making any money here. So I kind of pulled some of that back, and I put some knives on eBay. And it blew up. People were like bidding above like my retail price, and I'm like, whoa, this is great, So all of a sudden I was 100 orders behind. I'm like a year's worth of orders behind. So I took them off of eBay and just tried to get caught up, and then pulled all my knives from the inventory in these other places that had them on consignment. Yeah. And just started doing my own thing and developed a website and just repeat customers, word of mouth, and random hits on the website. And then just kind of kept it going.
And so now it's been going for 30 some years.
Yeah, I started in 87, so like 37 years, I guess now, 36 years.
Jeez,
so, yeah,
that is crazy.
About the last 20 have been really busy.
And the last 10 or so, it's almost all orders just straight off your website.
Yeah, I don't put anything out there anymore. There's no outlets that are carrying them at all. It's just website orders, repeat customers, word of mouth, random stuff like that. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's been very busy, and it's going great. People are very happy with them.
Are you making them all year? Or are you making them mostly in the winter?
Mostly in the winter. I have to do it year round just to keep up with it, you know. So a lot of times I'm in the woods and I get home and I got a couple hours before bed and I'll try to hit the shop and glue some knife handles or do something.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you know, I'm working those 16-hour days in the woods and it's hard to get in the shop at 10 o'clock at night and commit to it. So I do a lot more in the winter time. Have more time there, get out in the shop, try to get caught up before the summer season when I get busy again and have a good inventory going into the summer. And the fall and Christmas are usually my busiest time of the year for knife sales. Everybody wants a hunting knife or a gift for Christmas. So the last few months have been a little crazy.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
And Skyblade knives, the two things that make them pretty unique from anyone else, kind of your niche, is definitely the handle design or what you're using to make the handles, like the unique woods that you're using.
I use a lot of different hardwoods, exotic hardwoods, and a lot of like box elder burls and maple burls and different woods. And a lot of the burl woods, you can add a dye to the wood. You stabilize the wood, which they put a resin in the wood under a vacuum, so it kind of seals the wood grain and the pores. And you can add a colored dye in there, so you can get a little bit of a color in the grain of the wood as well. So it kind of makes them unique and stand out a little bit if you want something more colorful, or a lot of just natural colored woods. And been doing that for many years. And
your blade is definitely different than like some of the modern knives you see now. Your blade is like a harder stainless. Is that accurate?
It's a stainless steel S35VN stainless made here in the US. Yeah. And it's made specifically for cutlery. And so it's a very hard steel that it's very strong, holds an edge well. So it's a little bit harder to sharpen than some, but
super strong.
Not impossible, but definitely holds an edge well and very strong steel. And I have a lifetime warranty on them. So if anybody has a problem, I fix it or replace it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It works well.
That's cool. Well, let's shift gears and go to the bear attack story, because I really want to kind of hear that kind of step by step and go through the kind of the days leading up to that and that day. I'm sure with all your time on the trails over the years, you've bumped into a lot of different bears and probably had some similar encounters.
Lots of bears over the years. I mean, working for the Forest Service out there on my own off trail, like I was talking about, and a lot of country, it's in grizzly country. You know, I'm up in the Madison Range, Gallatin Range, and I've had probably see a dozen bears every year, a few grizzly, a lot of black bear, and never had any real close encounters. Back in the 90s, I think I had a sow grizzly with a couple cubs that was kind of bluff charging me, and I just kept backing up the hill and got away from her, you know, and she never came that close. But nothing as close as this incident. But I do see a lot of bears and carry the bear spray all the time when I'm out there. And with the Forest Service, I'm not allowed to carry a handgun because I'm not law enforcement and I'm in a government vehicle and everything. So it's just bear spray is what I've just always had, bear spray, and never had to use it, you know, for so many years out there.
Man.
And finally, there was one year up in West Yellowstone where I ran into a little black bear that was bedded behind a log. And I don't know if he was sleeping or eating on something, but I just came up around the corner of this big deadfall, and here he was, and he came up and came at me, and I had to bear spray him and right in the face, and then he just spun and took off, you know, but he'd clawed my Carhartt pants a little bit.
Oh, is that
I went
close?
Down on my back and sprayed like that, kind of went backwards. Yeah.
Holy cow.
But it was just a little, 80-pound bear, and he spun and was gone in a second. And that was kind of the start of this, oh no, okay, this could be bad out here, and so I always had the bear spray. But never had any other problems than that. Usually you see the bear, and 99% of the time they kind of wander off, or they look at you and then they just do their own thing, It does
kind of show you the odds of the actual attack happening with how many miles you've had boots on the ground in Grizz country, where it's only happened, to you one time with that many miles, like more miles probably in the backcountry than almost any
most
human
people ever would. Yeah. I mean, like 5 or 6 days a week at the Forest Service, sometimes more. And then my weekends, I'm usually out hiking as well, so a lifetime in the woods.
Yeah. I mean,
and it finally caught up to me, it's just the wrong place, wrong time. And, the odds finally caught up to me.
So let's go to that day. What were you up to the day of the attack?
Well, the day before, I had just finished up one of my trails projects, and I was up Buck Ridge, south of Big Sky up there, and I just finished up this project, and I'm like, yes, I'm done. I had been working on this for off and on for a couple years. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to take tomorrow off. I think it was Saturday morning. I'm going to take tomorrow off and just get out and hike around and kind of scope out where some elk might be and get ready for hunting season. Mm-hmm. So I got up at like 4 a.m. and headed over to Ennis and headed up Bear Creek and got to the trailhead an hour before daylight, started hiking like I normally do in the dark, the little flashlight, and got up there about 3-4 miles in. And there's kind of a big long meadow right there. And as I stepped out of the trees and stopped to kind of glass the meadow, I wanted to get really high up in the high country and look for elk, mm-hmm. So I'm working my way up the mountain. And at the end of this meadow, about 80 yards away, here's a sow grizzly and 2 cubs of the year, really small cubs, kind of step out. And so I see him like, oh, okay. And she happens to see me move at the same time, and she turns and looks at me, and then she runs up the trail and just disappears. I'm like, okay, that's a good bear.
Pretty
she doesn't
normal.
Like people. She's heading out of here, you know? So I waited 30 seconds and didn't see her. So I just thought I'm going to head up the other direction to the east and I'll go the opposite way. I'll never see her again. So I took a few steps and all of a sudden heard something and turned and looked over my left shoulder, and she had dropped her cubs and came down the ridge and circled behind me, probably getting my wind, And then as I hear something and turn, she's 30, 40 yards away, coming wide open down the hill.
So she circled you fast.
So she just dropped her cubs, and within a minute she had made a circle all the way behind me, and she was just coming in wide open. Her ears are laid back, and she's low to the ground, just charging on all fours. And I just, I had a pistol with me, but instinctively, because used to the Forest Service, when I'm only carrying bear spray, I've always practiced with that so much. So instinctively, I have my bear spray clips right here on my chest, on my backpack belt, chest belt. And I just pulled that out of the thing, pulled the safety out, looked back up, and she's at like 30 feet. Just in that second, she'd covered all that distance, and she's
still
right
full
there.
Sprint.
Full on. So I sprayed like that, and she just came right through the bear spray. Just her momentum, they're 30, 40 miles an hour downhill. Her momentum just carried her right through that bear spray. And I just turned and hands behind my back and went face down on the ground. And immediately she was on top of me. And she bit me 5 or 6 times in my right arm, and my shoulder. And then she started coughing a little bit from that bear spray was getting into her sinuses. It did. It just took a couple seconds, because she came through it so fast.
So much speed.
Yeah. And so she just all of a sudden started coughing, and she was gone just that quick. And so I got up and I'm like, oh, wow. And I got puncture wounds on my arm, on my shoulder. And so I'm like, all right, guess I got to go down and get some stitches, So I picked up my stuff and started down the trail.
Yeah.
And I probably had gone a few hundred yards, just a few minutes. And there's a kind of a creek crossing there. And I was just about to cross the creek, and it's kind of noisy from the water running. And all of a sudden I hear something, and I kind of turn, and just out of the corner of my eye, here's the bear again. And I think
that is insane.
I don't think she followed me. I think what happened is she picked up her cubs and came down the ridge, because there was a big canyon on the other side. And I think instead of crossing this big canyon with her cubs, she came down the open ridge, and I'm on the trail paralleling her basically. And so I think we just bad luck, randomly came back together again. She saw me down on the trail, attacked me. She recovered from the bear spray and attacked me a second time.
That is terrible luck.
She hit me. I was still standing. I just turned like that, saw her. She hit me from behind and basically knocked me down right onto my face, into the dirt.
Did you have any bear spray left?
I did have some, because I'd only given her just one,
squirt.
1 second blood, and then she'd been on me. So I did have more bear spray, and it was in my hand even, but it happened so quick. I had no choice to even do anything. It was just boom, knocked onto my face, bear spray's gone. And immediately I put my hands behind the back of my neck to protect my neck and my head and face, and just curled up in a ball face down. And the first bite was in this arm. And I heard the crunch of the bone when she broke my arm, and she ripped these tendons, took a chunk of meat out. And that initial pain. And I just went, and I made this noise and kind of flinched and pulled my arm away. And that, making that movement just triggered this frenzy. And then she would just, and then she just picked me up, and she would shake me like a rag doll and toss me. And I'd fly over 20 feet and hit the ground. I would just roll face down, curled up again. And immediately she was back on top of me again. Just boom, like that. And she'd bit this arm probably 25 times, my shoulder. At one point, she kind of half turned me, bit me in the side. I had canine marks in my side, but luckily they didn't puncture through, just, surface bite.
That is so lucky.
And just crazy how strong they were. I was just, I was a rag doll. There's nothing I could do. And I just kept focusing on hold it, pulling everything as tight as I could together, and that strength of, your core strength to keep up in a ball and not let her open me up, because I knew if I got flipped over on my back and I'm face up like that, she was going to tear my face off or kill me or something, and I'm like, I got to stay face down and protect myself.
Man, so you were like a cat toy, essentially, like
basically
for a while.
Was, yeah, just tossed around, and that's a good example of what it was kind of like. I was just being thrown around and jumped on, thrown around and jumped on.
Jeez.
And I just kept, blocking out that pain. And I kept telling myself, it's like, okay, she's going to go back and check on her cubs here. She's going to leave, you just got to hang out. You got to stick it through until the end, hold on. So I just kept telling myself over and over, she's going to leave. She's going to leave. Don't move. Don't move. And all of a sudden she stopped. And that was kind of the eeriest part of the whole thing is I'm curled up on the ground. She's standing on my lower back, and she's got her claws stuck in my lower back, just below my backpack. And they're like embedded into my back, just pinned. I'm pinned to the ground basically. And she's sniffing the back of my neck, and I can just feel it and hear it, and she'd sniff and then she'd nip on me, kind of like a bear nipping or a dog nipping you, and she'd nip my shoulder or my arm or whatever.
She wanted you to move probably.
She's testing to see if I was incapacitated or if I was still a threat, and she'd nip a little bit and then she'd sniff and then she'd nip, and I could just smell how rancid she was, and all those things were highlighted, and my senses were all highlighted, and I just kept trying not to even breathe, it's like holding on. And then finally she just stepped off, and then she was gone. And I'm just like, I didn't move still, because I don't know if she's standing 10 feet away or what happened, so I'm just not moving. I'm listening. And it's like, and all of a sudden I got to thinking, it's like, okay, if she left and I just wait here, she comes back, and attacks me a third time, I'm not going to survive it.
It's time to move.
I need to get out of here. So my scalp had been ripped open. I had a 5-inch gash in my scalp. My eyes were filled with blood. So I really slowly reached an hand up and wiped the blood out of my eye and looked that way and then looked this way. And I didn't see her anywhere, but I saw my pistol laying over there about 10 feet away. It had been ripped off. The straps had been broken. So I just looked around and dove for my pistol and hammer back and like, okay, what's going on, and then she wasn't there. So I'm like, all right, I got to get out of here. So I just tucked my pistol right here. This arm was broken, tendons sticking out. It was useless, but I just pulled it against my side and put my pistol right here where I could grab it easily, and then had bear spray in the other hand.
In your armpit.
Yep. Yeah. Right here in the armpit. Bear spray here, and just took off down the trail hiking. Like, okay, I just got to get distance away from here in case she comes back.
You're probably dripping blood everywhere, huh?
I was, yeah. 25 puncture wounds or so in this arm, and my face is all bloody and everything, but so I just headed down the trail, and I got, maybe a quarter mile down the trail, and I'm like, okay, she's not coming back again. I'm safe, So then I stopped, and I'm like, all right, calm down. Just check yourself over. I've had a lot of, medical training and that kind of thing. It's like, check yourself over, make sure you don't have a severed artery and you're going to bleed to death, because you still have 3 miles to the truck.
Make sure you don't need a tourniquet.
Exactly.
Somewhere.
So I looked and like, all right, it's all puncture wounds, and my head had kind of coagulated the blood there, and it's not bleeding bad. And this arm had 2 tendons sticking out and it's broke, but it was just all crimped up. But I'm like, all right, I'm not going to bleed to death, so I got to keep going. So I just kept hiking, and I think I stopped another once or twice, just questioning myself, are you sure you're okay? It's like you can't go into shock and die up here. You got to make sure you're good. And I checked. I'm like, I'm going to make it. Not a problem. So I hiked all the way down to the truck and got into the parking lot. And there was one other vehicle there, and it was Saturday morning in bow season. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, God, there could be other people coming up here, hiking up the trail and run right into this bear that's, pretty upset, and aggressive, for sure. And so I'm like, well, I need to write a note and put it on the bulletin board there, and just to remind or to let people know that there's a dangerous bear up here. So I'm getting in my car, this arm's useless, and I'm all chewed up, and now it's starting to get pretty stiff from the wounds. It's been an hour probably. And I'm trying to get a little notepad and a pen out and trying to write.
That
and
is
it's
crazy.
Just blood's dripping off the pen. It's like, I can't even read it myself. No one else can read it.
Just put a bloody sign up there.
So I kind of gave up on that idea. And I'm like, well, I got to head to the hospital, get some stitches and get my arm fixed up, figured out what's going on in there. And I thought, well, I better take a couple pictures of this. I'm out here in the woods. And so I did a couple photos and did a quick little 20-second video, that ended up going viral.
The viral video.
But then I just crawled in the truck and took off down. I threw a couple old jackets or something on the seat to kind of minimize the blood soaking into my seat cushions and everything, and then drove myself down to the road. And I got down off the mountain. It's probably 20 minutes of rough dirt road. Mm-hmm. Got down to the main gravel road, and there was a rancher there that was just putting mail in his mailbox or something, and I saw him over there. So I I stopped and got my window down, and I'm trying to flag him over, and he comes over and kind of looks into the window
everywhere.
and just sees me covered in blood. And I can see his eyes go like this. And I'm like, I just got attacked by a grizzly bear, and can you call the hospital and just let him know I'm on my way? And he's like, do you need to ride? And I was like, no, I made a mess of my own truck. I don't want to get yours bloody too. I'm good to go. You know, I'm okay. He's like, all right. So he kind of ran off to the house to make a phone call. And so I drove on myself into town, about another 15-minute drive down the highway, and got into Ennis. And I rolled into the Ennis hospital, and there was a sheriff's officer and a doctor and a nurse standing there at the emergency entrance. And so I pulled in there, and by then my arms had stiffened up so much from the wounds that I couldn't do anything really. I couldn't hardly move them, and I couldn't get my truck into park.
My
so
gosh.
I kind of went like this, and the sheriff's officer comes around, opens the door, and he reaches over and puts the truck in park for me, and I couldn't reach down to get the seat belt loose. And so he gets the seat belt loose, and he's like, God, I'm surprised you took time to buckle up. And I'm like, I just survived a bear attack. I don't want to die in a car wreck on the side of the road if something goes wrong, you know? So I kind of survived today. Anyway, so they helped me out of the vehicle, and I walked into the hospital. And at that point, everybody in the hospital had heard that there was a bear attack victim coming in. So everybody is lined up like in a row here, and I'm just walking by, and everybody's looking to see what I look like, you know? But they went in there and did some x-rays of my arm, and then, started putting stitches in, and had a doctor on one side and a PA on the other, and they were sat there just stitching all the wounds up in my arms. And the doc was like, yeah, you're going to have to go to orthopedic surgeon tomorrow and figure out what's going on. He's like, you got tendons sticking out, you know, and they just kind of shoved him back in and stitched over him to close it, you know?
Wow.
So anyway, they stitched my head up, and the gash in my scalp, where I think it was from a claw, had caught my head and just ripped my scalp open. It was kind of hanging over my ear.
Did you remember that moment when that bear caught your face?
I remember when my eyes just filled with blood. I don't remember feeling anything, pain or anything, but I'm just getting tossed around, and all of a sudden it was just like someone dumped a whole thing of blood on my head. You know, just my eyes all of a sudden filled with blood, and you feel that warm blood running down your neck. And so I remember that part of it, but I don't remember any pain.
That kind of shows how sharp their claws are, where you didn't get like a pain response from that.
Yeah, just opened me wide open. But, you know, my adrenaline's going, and I'm in that like block out the pain mode, so I don't move and scream or whatever too, you know. So I was in kind of the right emotional mode to like block that out, which probably made a difference too. I remember the pain of the first bite when she broke my arm. That was excruciating.
You felt the crunch.
Yeah, and I heard that crunch and everything. It's like, and then everything else, I don't really remember pain at that point. You're into this different mode, and you're just like, you block it out, and the adrenaline's going. And I knew that to survive this, I had to block out that pain, or I had to ignore it or something, because you just, you know, if you just sit there and start screaming and fighting back, she's going to keep doing the same, you know, and fighting back and fighting me. So I knew I had to block it out and be motionless. And so I don't remember any pain after that until hiking out, you know, and everything kind of, the adrenaline wears off, and then my arm's all crimped up, you know.
Oh, man. So were you getting a lot of pain on the hike out, and then the truck ride in? Everything was starting.
Yeah, at that point it was pretty bad. This arm mostly. I mean, these are puncture wounds, you know, you feel it, it's numb, kind of hurting, you know, but it was nothing like the left arm, because I had a bunch of nerve damage in here and 2 tendons sticking out, and it kind of crimped up. This whole wrist was kind of curled up like this, and it felt like my arm was in a vice. So it was pretty bad. Yeah. But everything else was like, that's nothing compared to this arm, you know, so that was the worst part.
Do you remember what you said in that viral video?
I just kind of talked about, you know, my eyes are good, my face is good, my internal organs. It's like I didn't get ripped to pieces. I'm going to survive this, you know. And I kind of just mentioned something like that, and then, you know, it's like, you know, I had bear spray. It didn't work, but it helped, you know. And you know, you got to have. And I had the pistol with me, but I just, you know, didn't get a chance to use it. I was so used to pulling the muscle memory of pulling that bear spray, and I was ready instantly with bear spray just in case, and didn't expect an actual attack. It was like, it'll be a bluff charge, you know, but I'll be ready just in case. And boy, it was the real deal.
Man, yeah. And thinking about it now, it probably would have been, you know, quite difficult to get a shot with her coming that fast.
Yeah, I would have had probably one shot. Had I pulled the pistol, I'd had the same amount of time pulling the pistol as pulling the bear spray, probably, you know, pulled the pistol and had 1 or 2 shots, and she'd have been on me probably still, because that probably wouldn't have stopped her just with her speed and momentum. And whether I would have had a kill shot or not, I don't know, or a shot that would have turned her. I mean, you never know. Every animal's going to be different. Just the bang might have spooked her, you know.
For sure.
Or I might have just
Made her mad.
Put a round through her shoulder, and now she's fighting for her life too, and she's going to kill me no matter what, so you never know. It's just one of those things. And, now I practice, I always carry the bear spray and handgun, and I practice pulling both of them and locking my wrists together and just having either one available, whatever I think I'm going to need. If I need bear spray, if I think it's just kind of a bluff charge or warning, and if it's a full on thing, I've got the handgun as well. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. That's what I've been trying to practice more with, doing that.
In the bear spray, she got a little bit of it with the coughing, and then it wore off fairly quickly for her to come back at you again. Maybe she just got like a small dose.
Yeah, she came through it. It put out a big cloud, but it took her a fraction of a second to be through the cloud. Mm-hmm. So one little bit of whiff, or it was in her eyes or in her sinuses. Bears have the best sense of smell of any animal, so their sinuses are very sensitive to that. Yeah. So she got just enough in there that all of a sudden it started bothering her, and her adrenaline's going, I'm sure. So kind of like me, she's blocking it out and chewing on me, and all of a sudden, okay, this is uncomfortable. And so she took off. But, that kind of a situation like that, it helped, it turned her, and she left the scene, but it wasn't 100% because most bears are going to stop. They bluff charge, you spray, it's all over in the air. They smell it and they're like, this is horrible. I'm out of here. This situation was different with her speed.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Did you ever consider checking your cell phone for service for 911 or pulling that emergency beacon?
I knew that I didn't have cell service up there, and there was no way. And I wasn't going to call 911 unless I couldn't crawl out of there, and I had my emergency beacon with me, but I'm like, I'm good. I'm not bleeding to death. My legs are totally fine. I can hike out of here.
So your thought was, I can get there probably faster than they can get up here.
Probably. Yeah. And I knew I didn't have life-threatening, injuries. So if I was bleeding out and, and I had tourniquets or something, that'd have been a different story. It's like, okay, what do I need to do? I need to pull the button on this thing and get a helicopter in here, or I'm going to die.
Wild.
But I'm the kind of person that, like, last thing I want to do is like call for help if I don't need it, and
yeah,
I've heard of people like, I'm hiking up above the M and I sprained my ankle, so I need a helicopter ride out of here. I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding? It's like I would have spent all day crawling out of there before I do that. As long as I'm not going to die.
The last thing you want to do.
I'll get myself out of the woods if possible. So
for sure.
So I was totally fine as far as getting out of there. My legs had no injuries at all below my waist, so I was able to hike out.
And then on that second attack, did you catch a glimpse of the cubs at all?
I did not. No. I'm assuming they were behind her right there somewhere, but I just caught a glimpse of her out of the corner of my eye, and then it was all face down and getting thrown around.
Man.
So, yeah, crazy.
So before we chat about rehab, because I'm interested on how you rehabbed out of that and what that looked like, but before we go there, was there, after the attack the next couple days, was there any sort of like crime scene investigation that happened?
So the next day, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and the interagency Grizzly Bear Study Team got together, and they took horses up there, and they went all the way up the trail to where I was attacked and out, and never saw a bear. So they didn't run into her. If they'd ran into her and she charged them, they probably would have put her down, if she was acting aggressive towards them, but they never did see her. So as far as we know, she still could be out there. Bears will live 15 to 20 years in the wild, and it's been about 7 now, so she could still be out there.
Do they know of any other like attacks in that drainage?
There was one or two attacks in that drainage. I think there was one after mine and one a couple years before mine. And I don't remember the whole situation, if it was sow with cubs or what. I can't remember, but there has been a couple, but that's right in the heart of grizzly bear country. And there's a lot of bears in that country. So it could have been different bears too.
Yeah.
And they cover a lot of terrain,
So you're in the Ennis hospital, they're stitching you up. Are you there for a couple days?
No, I was just there for the day. It probably took them 6 or 7 hours to get me all stitched up and checked over. And then I went back to Bozeman, and that was on a Saturday. So it was Monday that I was able to get into an orthopedic surgeon and get my arm looked at. And they said, we need to get you in for surgery the next day, kind of thing. But I was, so I was in Ennis, and I'd called my girlfriend, and just said, hey, I think I called her on my way to the hospital, actually. I said, hey, I just got attacked. Actually, it's kind of funny. I called and she's just chatting all of a sudden. No. I'm like, I'm just letting her talk, And then, and she's like, well, aren't you up on the mountain? I'm like, actually, I kind of had a little run-in with a grizzly bear and I'm on my way to the hospital. And she was in nursing school and a nurse. So she kind of explained to her, I got broken arms, some tendons sticking out, lots of puncture wounds, but I'm fine. I'm going to be okay. And can you, grab some clothes in case I got to stay here at the hospital and meet me in Ennis? So she came over from Bozeman with an extra clothes that weren't all bloody, and everything to change into, and was there during the hospital. But then she gave me a ride back to Bozeman. And the next day is when I guess Monday, I went into the orthopedic surgeon and kind of figured out what I had to do for surgery. And by the middle of that week, I was in surgery getting everything put back together. With all the puncture wounds, are they worried about weird infections popping up? Yeah, they cleaned, they kind of just closed everything off. And then when I got in with the orthopedic surgeon, he opened up some of the bigger wounds again to make sure there was no other, debris and hair or whatever stuck in there, and clean that out. And they'd put me on some antibiotics in the Ennis hospital. And then they gave me some more antibiotics in Bozeman just to make sure to try to kill anything that might be going on in there. And then, they opened everything back up. So all these stitches, they had to recut them and get in there and clean it out better and then check and see what was going on and try to find the tendons to reattach. And it was quite the ordeal. So your main injury, the most significant one from that day, is the tendons in your forearm. Yeah, this forearm here, you can kind of see there's a hole right there. That's where the muscle was actually torn off. I mean, some of the muscle was a big hole, chewed up and eaten or something. I don't know. But anyway, big hole there. And I had two tendons sticking out. And so they had to go in and kind of open this back down and find those tendons where they attached and reattach them. And the first time the doc's in there and he's like, okay, and he'd grab it with a little thing there and kind of pull, and my fingers would move a little bit. He's like, all right, that's the one. So they'd reattach this. And then, okay, let's reattach this one. And then he got one kind of stitched in, and my middle finger was sticking straight up. I swear to God. And he's like, that's not going to work. So he had to actually cut it and then restitch it a little bit looser. And now it's a little bit too loose. But
no way.
Yeah. So it doesn't kind of lift all the way. But it was kind of funny. I was awake through the whole thing. So they're like, do you want to be out? And I'm like, no, I want to watch the whole thing, and see what's going on. So they gave me the shot in the nerve block in the shoulder and the armpit. And so my whole arm was numb. And he was in there and he started cutting on this one right here. And I was like, ow, ow, ow. And he's like, what, you can feel that? And I'm like, yeah. And the nerve block didn't work on this part of my arm right here. And so he had to do a couple shots of Novocaine in there too, because they started cutting through it. And it was just like someone's cutting me with a knife,
Crazy.
I'm like, whoa, stop.
You were like, I'll stay awake and watch this.
Yeah, I wanted to watch it. So they actually had a little curtain here, so I couldn't breathe on it. But they had a big screen right here in front of me, like a 30-inch screen with a camera, so I could watch it on the screen right above me as I'm just laying there, And then at one point, he's like, can you see that? And I'm like, I can't see it really well. So he's like, don't breathe on it. And he lifts the curtain. And I got to look over, and he's like, he had this opened up. He's like, that's your ulna bone right there where it's broken. I was looking right into my arm,
Man.
So it's kind of cool. I mean, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me, So I wanted to see what it was like,
Yeah. Most people would pass out.
But yeah, so they reattached that, and my arm was kind of like hamburger in here where it had been chewed on. So they kind of cut these other pieces of tissue out of there that weren't attached to anything and reattached the tendons and got this to work and stitched everything up. And then I had 3 months. I had 6 weeks with this brace on my arm, my hand, my wrist to keep these fingers back and my wrist back, because if I went like this, it would tear that loose again because it was so, ripped up.
Yeah.
So I had this weird looking brace on my hand for 6 weeks to get everything to heal well, and then I could get that off and start, moving again. So, I'm not one that stops doing what I do. So I'm out in the woods. I was up fishing actually a couple weeks after. I've got this brace on. I'm trying to fly fish, with this brace on one hand and trying to cast and get the line in somehow, So it was a little difficult, but still getting out there doing that kind of thing,
What about your scalp? Did they have to stitch all that up?
They stitched all that back up. I don't know how many stitches, but they had stitches and staples in my scalp. And then, the hair grew back eventually, and, you can't tell it all.
Yeah, you can't tell.
There, if I eventually, when I go completely bald, I'm sure it'll show up. I thought about I should just shave a strip there and show this big 5-inch scar off.
That would be awesome. That would be a sweet haircut.
Yeah, there you go. But it got lucky there because at about a half inch from the back of where that scar was, about a half inch farther back is where the main artery that comes up through your neck into your scalp. And the doc said that if it had gone a half inch farther and severed that artery, he said it would have been a different story. You'd have had to have direct pressure to keep from bleeding out, because there's a lot of blood that pumps up through there. So I got pretty lucky there, because I wouldn't have known that probably. I mean, if it was kept bleeding down the back, I would have probably kept my hand on it or something, but that's about all I could do, as you're hiking out. It's hard to bandage your head,
Crazy.
So, I got lucky for sure. It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
And here, everything's working pretty good. This hand doesn't quite open. And when it's cold in the winter, it's pretty slow. It feels like I'm squeezing like a weight thing to hold my hand, all the scar tissue, but it's working.
So you rehabbed through the winter and then you were back in the woods that spring?
That spring, I went back up. My first day back, like hiking in the woods, was actually up Buck Ridge, which is just over the mountain from where I got attacked, and in one of the biggest grizzly areas in the whole range as well,
How'd you feel about that day?
Well, as I'm driving up the road and like a half a mile from the trailhead, and just, right after daylight, half a mile from the trailhead, and I come around the corner and a sow grizzly with a little cub runs across, I swear to God, runs across the road in front of me, and she stops like 80 yards out in the field and stands up like that looking at me,
The first day back?
The first day back in the woods, and I was in the truck. But I rolled the window down. I actually got a photo of her. So you can't see the cub, I don't think, because he was too small in the grass. But I got this sow looking at me like this up on her hind legs. I got a picture of her out the car window, and then she ran over the ridge.
You couldn't even make that up.
I know, and I swear to God, I got up to the trailhead, and then the whole time I'm like, it was a reminder that you could run into a bear anywhere. I mean, I'm clear at the trailhead. I've got to go 8 miles up the trail on a dirt bike and then spend all day hiking, and here I'm running into a grizzly with a cub right here at the trailhead,
That is bonkers.
I have to say that day I was very anxious, very nervous, just the entire time. I was just, my head's on a swivel like this,
Especially after seeing a sow.
Yeah, and he's just like, is this going to happen again today? Oh my God, what are the odds?
Oh my gosh.
But everything went fine, but for that first, few weeks or couple months, I was definitely more nervous, more anxious in the woods. You're just like always doing this. And I used to like be really quiet, sneaking through the woods when I'm doing my job, because all of a sudden you see a bunch of elk, and like, sneak in, get a photo of some elk, and then go back to work kind of thing. But now I'm like, I got to keep talking, so I would just talk to myself and just whatever I was thinking, I would say it. So I'm hanging flags like, okay, I'll put this one here, and then the trail will go here. And I'm just kind of talking what I'm thinking to be making noise. So I wouldn't at least surprise a bear, and be at 20 feet or something all of a sudden. So,
wow.
Yeah. So it was definitely, and it, it's, over time, it gets better. Every day that I'm in the woods and I don't get attacked, it's a little bit better, And it's been 7 years now. So, I've been out there all the time, but I knew I had to be back out there right away.
Yeah.
Actually, after my attack, and I got that brace off my arm after 6 weeks, and there was 4 days left in hunting season. And I'm like, all right, I got to get out and see if I can fill my elk tag.
Oh, so you went back that fall.
So I went back the last 4 days of hunting season, and the first day was by myself. And actually was up in the Madison Range, but a little farther to the north. Mm-hmm. And, there's just many bear there. Maybe not quite as many grizzly, but there's a lot of bear. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to go up here. I'm not going back up Bear Creek today anyway, but I'll go by myself up this other trail. And I hiked up and got 2 or 3 miles up the trail. And there's these fresh bear tracks in the trail, and like up to a rub tree, and there's all this bear hair where you'd rub there. And I'm just like, oh my God, here's the like big grizzly tracks. And, it was from like the day before, but still he could be anywhere,
So that was
I was pretty nervous, but I didn't see any bear, didn't get an elk. Came back down, and then the next day, a buddy of mine joined me, and we actually went back up where I got attacked. And the two of us, and we had pistols, and he had a rifle and had a bear spray. And we hiked up right to where I was attacked, and I stood right in the same spot, and I told him the story, and he's like, oh my God, the hair standing up on the back of my neck, and,
man.
And we kind of just hunted together, hiked around, looked around, just being out there. And then the next day I went with a different guy to a different area, a little bit farther south of there, and hunted up on some property up there, and actually saw fresh bear tracks from like the night before, the day before, and a little bit of snow going up the trail, big grizzly tracks. And I'm just like, geez, everywhere I go, there's trails, but I ended up, never saw a bear, but I did sneak in on a nice 6-point bull, and I almost had a shot on him, but he just couldn't make it all work, and I saw a nice big buck that I just couldn't quite get a shot on. So I almost filled both tags that last day of the season there, and that would have been perfect, but it was just didn't quite happen.
That would have been insane.
Yeah. So I was so excited just at least to get out there and to see him,
Yeah. So you have a pretty crazy mindset, whether you know it or not. I think a lot of people wouldn't go back in the woods. A lot of people would certainly not go back in the woods that year, and maybe take a couple years to get back after it. Right. I think a lot of people would have turned around and went back to the truck their first day back, seeing bear tracks, or a lot of people would have not got out of the truck seeing that sow. Do you ever think about your mindset, or do you think about where that comes from? Are you focused on mental toughness at all?
Well, my whole life was in the woods and exercise and just adapting to all these different situations. And my dad was a big outdoors, my whole family. And so I've just around that my whole life, and Dad taught me a lot of different things and what to watch for and to be aware of what's going on around you. And I've always been into exercise. So I'm like, you learn how to block out the pain in the gym, or if you're hiking up the side of the mountain, your legs are pumped, you just block that out, and you just get that mental toughness or adapt to that, and kind of be like, oh yeah, it hurts, but so what? I'm still going, And then being out there, with the bear in bear country, and it's like my life is in the woods. I work in the woods, I play in the woods. I don't know what I would do if I wasn't outside, And so I knew after on day one, I knew that I had to go back out there as soon as I could. And so I waited till I got this brace off. And then I'm like, I'm going back outside. I'm going back to the woods. I'm going to go back to bear country and face it, because I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to be anxious, but I have to do this because this is what my life is. And I don't want to give up something. I don't want to give up hunting. I don't want to give up the outdoor activity. So face your fear. Get used to it again. Realize that you're not going to get attacked every time you go out there, And so, yes, there's that part of me that just was like, I couldn't wait to get back out there, and I didn't face it. I knew it was going to be kind of like, oh, this is going to be a little scary and anxious, but I just had to do it. And that's how my life is. And so I hunt in bear country. I still am out there doing the same thing. I've got some trail cameras set up where I try to record a bunch of bear activity in certain areas just to have for social media or just for my own, and I really like wildlife, and bears have always interested me. At one point I wanted to be a bear or large carnivore biologist, before I got in with the Forest Service. That was kind of my plan. And I've done bear studies in Glacier Park and those things. And so it doesn't really, they never scared me before. I was always cautious. They didn't scare me. Now I'm more anxious for sure about in grizzly country. I'm not real comfortable camping in grizzly country or hiking in the dark. I'd rather be able to see it coming and be ready for it, but I'm still out there, and I know that it could happen again at any time, but it's a chance you have to take to enjoy the lifestyle that you like. Yeah. And, I hear people all the time like, oh, well, just don't go into bear country, and it's like, everywhere in Montana is bear country of some sort. You can't get away from it. Bears come into downtown, at times,
all over
so
Southwest
they could be
Montana.
anywhere. So they could happen anywhere, and of course you put yourself more in the depth of grizzly country by yourself. I'm kind of doing everything wrong in that sense. I'm off trail. I'm by myself, sneaking through the woods or whatever. Quiet. But, I'm trying to make more noise now when I'm out there, which is tough. Hunting season, you can't really do that. But when I'm working, I do. And just, it's like, all right, I'm back out there, and the odds are it's not going to happen. But at the same time, I'm one of those people, it's like, well, there's a 50-50 chance. You either get attacked or you don't get attacked every day you're out there, But, so I'm always ready. I'm always prepared. And, and just, it's like, if it's coming, I want to at least see it coming. I want to know it. I've got everything I need to protect myself. I'm paying attention. I've trained, I've practiced, and I'm ready to take it on if it has to. But hopefully I can avoid that.
And hopefully it's just one a lifetime. Yeah. Are you a believer that these bears aren't out looking to kill humans? They're just protecting their young, or they're getting surprised and going to that protection reflex? Yeah,
there's seems like there's 3 different situations. It's a sow with cubs that can be a problem. It's a surprising a bear, and you're in its space, and it's going to react by trying to attacking you, or you've got a bear on a carcass or its food source, and it's going to protect its food source because that's life, for an animal. So those are usually the three situations. And so, paying attention to what's going on around you. I'm always telling people, take your earbuds out or your headphones off so you can hear things. You might hear a bear or an animal in the brush, and don't be watching your feet all the time. Glance down to where you're walking, glance back up and be doing this and know what's around you, your surroundings. And then if you see tracks, be like, all right, what kind of tracks are these? Are these grizzly tracks? Are they bear tracks? How old are they? Fresh grizzly tracks going up the trail in front of you that are almost steaming fresh, or a pile of bear scat. It's like, maybe you want to turn around at that point, because maybe you're going to run right into it. So there's certain things you can look for, certain safety things. And if you do see one, avoiding the situation, trying to back out of that before you get too close to it. Or if you, being able to identify a black bear versus a grizzly bear, and just, because they act differently in the woods sometimes. And there's a lot of things you can do to, prevent an encounter, or at least to minimize an encounter. And then knowing what to do if you do get in that situation, and being prepared with the right equipment makes a big difference too.
And what is your perspective on the growing population of bears in Montana? Are you seeing way more than you saw 20 years ago?
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely a lot more grizzly out there. Just, spending my whole life in Montana, and there's, I don't know, tenfold the number of bears out there, grizzly, it seems like.
Wow.
So there's a lot more. And, going back to your other question, I don't think they're out there to just attack people. It's those situations that you get into. And if you can avoid those situations, you're usually fine. Of course, there's always an aggressive bear that can, or maybe you have food in your tent or something, like that. You got to be aware of those kind of things. You shouldn't be doing that. And a bear might come in because it's hungry and opportunistic. But most of the time, they're not going to come after you. But they're, with more bears in the woods, more people out there recreating. I mean, we have more people in this valley and area than we've ever had. And after during the whole COVID thing, everybody went outside and started hiking. So now you got more outdoor recreationalists. And, those two things together, more people, more bears, you're going to have more incidents. And we do have more attacks. Seems like every year we've got 2 or 3 attacks. Usually it's bow season when someone's sneaking in on an elk or bugling or something like that. It's when most of them happen, but it could happen anywhere at any time. And we're going to see more of that, I think, as it continues on, just because of the population of both bears and people around here.
Do you think Montana will head towards a grizzly bear season?
I think they're going to keep trying. I mean, they've been trying for 10 years and it keeps getting shut down. And, but I think it's going to take, after a couple people are killed, unfortunately, it's probably going to take a couple deaths or something like that, something gruesome. And then people are going to be like, okay, I understand. We need to do some more kind of management here, put some fear back in the bears, knock the population down a little bit, but, they're the top predator out there, and we don't do anything to scare them off.
No fear,
and there's no fear. And they need to know that there's somebody out there can be a top predator as well, and maybe put some fear in them, and maybe knock the population back a little bit, and see how that goes, I guess.
Yeah, you definitely see that difference in bear behavior when you go to like Alaska versus Montana, and you see bears that are hunted quite frequently compared to bears that are hunted not at all.
Right.
And, they're around, and there's certainly still some attacks up there, but you can watch the difference in behavior where like they're quite scared of humans up there compared to down here.
Down here, they're not. Yeah. They just have no fear at all.
Which is so interesting. But if you think about how these bears are extremely smart, and they do live extremely long lives, like all those things they can learn about like Montana behavior, they can adapt pretty quickly to like what they're going to get into and not get into.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a big thing for sure.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's surprising. Yeah. You'll hear about these attacks, and it's like, there's one in Alaska versus like 7 in Montana. It's like, there's so much more of that, those incidences occurring down here. And, we're going to have to do something about it eventually. People are just always going to go to the woods and recreate, and the bears are, encroaching more and more. There was a grizzly in Jeffers, Montana, right outside of Ennis this last summer that came right through town. And there was video and a bunch of photos of it walking right through town there in the middle of the valley, so I hear a lot of that up in northern Montana. They're coming right out into the hay fields off the mountains, and they're expanding their range. I think it was about 6 years ago, I I did a kind of an interview talk with a group over in the Paradise Valley at this ranch. And the bear biologist for Yellowstone Park was there. And he was saying that their estimate was about 1,100 grizzly in the Yellowstone ecosystem at that point. So, that was 6 years ago. So
that's a lot of bears.
Yeah, that's a lot of bears. And that's just Yellowstone Park and the surrounding terrain, right around it, national forest around it. So,
yeah, that's a small grid to have 1,100 bears in.
Yeah. And I'm up Buck Ridge quite a bit. I've got some trail cameras I set up there and just to get bear, photos and videos and stuff. And I've got a couple videos of, I think there was 9 different bears in 2-week period on this one water hole. And there was like 5 grizzly and 4 black bear that were coming into my camera on one water hole in a 2-week period. So they're overlapping. They're so thick up there. They're overlapping. There was like 2 sows with 2 cubs each, and then 1 male grizzly by himself that were just moving in that same area. And they would just be like 2 hours apart or an hour apart. They come into water, they come in to snip around, and it was just, it's like, to see that many in one area. And I'm out there hiking around in that. It's like, they hear you or they smell you or they see you and you're going right by it and don't even know it,
Man.
So crazy.
It is crazy. Well, thanks so much, Todd. I really appreciate it. That story is wild. I cannot believe that story.
Thank you. Yeah. It was something I hope I never experience again, but I'm just very, very thankful to be here to share the story.
Yeah. We're really thankful as well. I mean, it's crazy you came out of that as good as you did. I know you went through some serious injuries, but it could have been so much worse.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When I see some other injuries that people have had, or that guy that was attacked this last year, fall up there in Gallatin, and got his face tore up really bad. And just like, I'm very lucky that it didn't go to that point. It was my arm got tore up pretty good, but it's working. So,
man, do you feel like you are the type of guy that doesn't really ever want to retire? You want to just hike in the woods as long as you possibly can?
Well, I wouldn't mind retiring to get out of the federal government, but I will spend my life in the woods for sure. And maybe it won't be doing that, but it'll be doing something out there. And I'm going to go as long as I can. I'm big into the hiking and exploring and dirt biking and just anything that's exercise and outdoors and in the mountains. And, I love going to the top of a peak and just being at the top of some peak at 10,000 feet at daylight and get some sunrise photos and then get some exercise back down, So just being outside is my life, and I'll do that as long as my body will keep moving. Definitely.
I know. I could see you being the guy that's just hiking around in your 80s and 90s.
I hope I'm that guy that's going to be out there doing some commercial at 92 years old, being like, "Hey, don't give up, folks. Get out here and do some push-ups and keep hiking."
Yeah, it would be like one of those old Milwaukee commercials where they like crack a beer on top of a peak.
There you go. Exactly. We'll see, but I keep working towards that. And like I said, I had the surgery on messed up shoulder this last winter, and just kind of recovering from that and trying to get back in shape and doing everything I can to be in the mountains and getting some exercise.
What does your gym routine look like for like the last 10, 15 years?
I've usually I'm to the gym, at least 6 days a week usually. And, at least an hour at a time. And a lot of times I'll do stuff at home too. Like I get up in the morning, and if I've got to go to work, I'll just try to get a 15 or 20 minute workout real quick in the morning before I go to the woods. Mm-hmm. And then usually it was in the evenings when I'd get to the gym kind of thing. Or in the wintertime when I have more time, I'd go in the afternoon when it's not as busy. But my whole life has been exercise. I remember back in the 90s, and I was working in timber at the Forest Service, and we were doing 10-hour days from 7 to 5:30 or 5 every day. But I would get up to the M, and I'd hike up the M and run down 5 times up the steep side before I go to work. And then I spend all day at work hiking in the woods, marking timber sale stuff. And then I get off of work, and I'd go right to the M and do it 5 more times. So I was doing the M 10 times a day, plus 10 hours of hiking in the middle of the day.
That is insane.
I was kind of training. I wanted to do the ridge run. So I was like, I got to keep doing this to be ready for the ridge run or whatever might be going on. And I never did do the ridge run. I just was always too busy. But I was training kind of like that. But yeah, that was for years I did that. That's probably hammered my knees quite a bit. They're not quite as strong as they used to be. Too much running down the M 10 times a day really is bad on your knees,
That is incredible.
But yeah, I was doing that five times in the morning, 5 times in the evening. So But but I try to get to the gym, do stuff at home whenever possible, sit-ups or push-ups or some light weights or whatever, and then gym when I can. And then just hiking, all the time out in the woods during the day. Summers are great, summer and fall for me, because I'm getting exercise at work, which I love. And,
all day long.
But I've just been one of those people, you do it your whole life, even if you're not in that good a shape. I'm definitely not in the best shape right now. I need to, because after my whole winter of, being laid up with a surgery, I need to get in better shape. But I could still go out there and do a 20-mile day, and I don't have to stop and take breaks. And I think it's a lot of it's a mental thing. It's just like, you learn how to block out that little bit of pain or the uncomfortable thing, And everybody always calls me Uncomfortable Todd is kind of my nickname. It's like people, because I don't mind like sleeping on the ground. I don't mind, the exercise or the pain or whatever. And it's like, parking. I go to the store to get groceries. I don't look for the close parking spot. I purposely park at the back, because every time you get just a little bit of exercise, maybe it's only a 2-minute walk, but every couple minutes add up. And it's like, that's what keeps you moving, especially as you age.
Yeah.
You got to keep moving. You got to keep strengthening your muscles and keep your joints moving, your body moving. And so I'll purposely park and walk farther. And everything I do in my life, I kind of like, it's like, that would be easier way to do it. But if the apocalypse comes, I'm going to be prepared, because I can learn, I've adapted to going through this situation, and I'm not going to be panicked if I can't eat, or if I only have to eat once a day, or if I, whatever it might be.
I love that.
That's kind of just how I've always been. So I get a lot of people make fun of me over that. It's like, oh, geez, Todd, have some comforts in your life. And I'm like, I don't need that. I feel better if I'm out there getting some exercise than to be sitting relaxing,
That is awesome. Because it's so good too, because like as a society, we've gotten so soft.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You read about like the Jim Bridger days, you read about the kind of World War II days, anything like that, any book you read related to anything like 100, 200 years ago, life is so incredibly soft right now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Those people went through so much just to survive. They had to go through so much more. And most people nowadays, especially the younger generations, they have no idea what that would be like. If they had to shut their phone off, they'd be lost and they couldn't function,
Yeah.
And it's like, man, get outside and go do something, and something that's good for your body. I just think the health of people nowadays in this generation, there's still people that exercise, but there's so many that by the time they're in their 40s or 50s, they can't even function hardly, because they've not eaten healthy. They've not exercised. They never get outside for fresh air or for a workout.
Yeah.
And that, they're just going to, if it wasn't for medicine, they'd be dead already. A lot of them, they're just staying alive because of medical things. It's like, man, you got to get out there, and I'm just going to go as long as I can and do everything I can to stay in shape and hopefully have a long life.
And how old are you this year?
I'm 57 right now.
That is pretty insane.
I was like 24 yesterday, 57 today. Time flies, man. It's crazy. But
for 57, you definitely look more like 41 or something. So
thanks.
After being attacked by a grizzly. So you're doing something right.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. But
that's awesome.
Yeah. I a lot of it's just staying in shape and being outside, I think, and, just doing everything I can to enjoy that and continue on. I don't see my life changing at all in the near future. So
that is amazing.
I spend a lot of time in southern Utah. I love the desert, and get down there and explore and hike and dirt bike and that country, especially in the wintertime when it's nasty up here, try to get down there. And I just get down there and do a 12-hour day out there in the desert, just exploring some different terrain and cliffs and canyons and just anything I can do to get outside. I love it.
That's cool. Yeah, you're hitting all the elements, because you're getting the exercise, you're getting the vitamin D, and then the outdoors, what it does to us psychologically is a game changer.
Yeah, I always tell people when they're like, oh man, I'm just kind of depressed and, in this cold winter and whatever. I'm like, man, just get outside, exercise and outdoors. Like, even if it's a 5-minute hike or a walk around town, just that fresh air, looking around, get out of the house, and do something. And then anytime you get an exercise, people are like, oh, it hurts so bad or it's tough. And it's like, stick with it for a couple weeks and you'll get addicted to it. You know,
Oh,
and
yeah.
once you start getting that feeling of a workout and the adrenaline rush and just all that stuff flowing through your body and the pump. And it's like, then you can't wait to go back and do it again, you know? And then after you start seeing results and you start feeling better and like, oh, I have all this more energy and I don't have to sleep as much, or just everything changes, you know, and I think it's all keyed around outdoors and exercise, in my opinion. So.
It's amazing. Yeah. A body in motion just stays in motion and becomes a lifestyle. And it is quite addicting. And you feel so much better in everything you do. Like work, everything. Your brain is more focused.
Absolutely.
It's a game changer.
Yep. I completely agree.
Well, thank you, Todd. Thanks for coming by the lab.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
Hope you enjoy the 10 millimeter.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. Can't wait to get out and shoot that.
Hopefully you never have to use it on another bear.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. Thanks, Todd.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks so much for listening. That is an insane story from Todd. There's so much to unpack there. There's so many ways to peel that story back. Not only the bear attack, but the way he was able to remain calm and collected through that whole experience just kind of blows my mind. It makes me think of the book Deep Survival, where our best chances of surviving are to have this deep, deep library of core experiences to draw from. And Todd certainly amplifies that, where he didn't panic. He didn't panic at all after that attack. And he was able to stay calm and collective because he's had so many hard experiences in the backcountry, so many experiences year after year that led to that day. That's a phenomenal story. But my favorite part is really Todd's mindset. He does things the hard way. He's not looking for any shortcuts in life. And he's doing the physical and mental things right. He's keeping his mind and body sharp by training, lifting weights, spending time outside. And it is amazing when you sit with Todd here in person. He looks about 20 years younger than he actually is, even after being attacked by that bear twice. He is a true inspiration. And the stories around him killing bulls with that pistol are mind-blowing. If you've ever archery hunted elk, rifle hunted elk, to think about how many bull elk he's killed with a handgun within 100 yards is insane. He is a true mountain legend, and there is a lot to take away from Uncomfortable Todd. Thanks so much for being here today, Mountain Tough, and we'll see you on the next episode.